Hello, I'm Phil Baty, Chief Knowledge Officer at Times Higher Education, and I'm delighted to share some thoughts with you today about the World University Rankings and Africa's place in the rankings. And particularly, I want to argue that by understanding the methodology of global university rankings, Africa can harness the data and turn that data to its own strategic advantage. And I would like to say that I absolutely believe that Africa must have, absolutely should have, across the continent, a number of world-class research-led universities. So I think rankings should be taken seriously by Africa, despite the huge competing priorities for an education system that has great burdens placed upon it. It is still right that core, globally focused, research-led African universities embrace rankings. So first of all, I want to walk you through the methodology. So slide 2 here just shows you how much the Times Higher Education World University Rankings are underpinned by incredibly sound data. In order to create the 2022 edition of the rankings, we looked at 108 million citations to 14.4 million research publications. We gathered data from hundreds of universities, actually 2,144 universities submitted data. We were able to rank 1,662. They gave us more than almost 500,000 individual data points. We gathered surveys from 22,000 scholars all across the world, and we included 99 countries in the rankings. And that's allowed us to create, I think, the most comprehensive, balanced, and rigorous methodology. You can see there on slide 3, the overall ranking methodology. We basically have 13 separate performance indicators grouped into 5 core pillars of activity. And I'm going to walk through these one by one, because I think transparency in rankings is vital. It's important we understand what data goes into rankings, and that way we can ensure that we can use rankings properly for benchmarking and for strategic insight. So first of all, we look at citations impact. This is field-weighted citation impact normalized by more than 300 different fields. We're simply looking at how much your individual research papers from your university are cited and shared in the scholarly literature. That's journal articles, books, book chapters. And this is where I said earlier, 108 million citations to more than 14.5 or 14.4 million research publications are analyzed. It's vital to understand how much universities contribute new knowledge, disseminate that new knowledge throughout the scholarly world. You can see in slide 5, we also look at research in terms of reputation, productivity, income. We look at your reputation amongst peers. That's where the 22,000 academic survey respondents come in. They tell us simply who's great, who's best, who's cutting edge in their field based on their subject-specific knowledge. We look at your productivity, your ability to produce papers in world-class research journals, scaled for the size of your university. And we look at your income, your ability to draw in research funding. On slide 6, we're talking about the teaching environment. We have to be clear that the teaching environment metrics are very broad, quite simplistic, because we're looking at, as I said, 99 different countries who are submitting data to the rankings. So we look at things like the teaching reputation, again, going back to that peer survey. We look at very simple things like faculty-student ratios, although we don't give that too much weighting because, of course, it is a simplistic measure, but it gives you an impression of the intimacy you might be able to expect as a student, the resources available to students on campus. We look at the research intensity of the environment, a doctorates to academic staff ratio, a doctorates to bachelor ratio. And you can see here from this quote from Carl Jaspers, that is because we believe the types of universities we rank in the world rankings are research intensives, and that research should inform the teaching environment. So that Carl Jaspers said in 1923 regarding the idea of a university, it's not a place merely of instruction. A student should participate actively in research, and from this experience acquire the intellectual discipline and education which will remain with him throughout his life. I obviously, of course, say also with her throughout her life. This was back in 1923 when he said this. We look at knowledge transfer. You can see there from slide 8. We're looking at your ability to draw income from industry for your research. So R&D, working with the so-called real world outside of the university campuses, translating your knowledge from your laboratories, your classrooms out into industry, your ability to draw in industry funding. It's a very important indicator of the third mission of universities, knowledge transfer. And finally, international outlook. This is the global ranking for globally focused universities working on an international stage, publishing in an international environment, hiring faculty from an international marketplace, hiring and drawing in student talent from an international marketplace. So we look at your co-authored publications. If you're publishing with authors outside your own country, that's inherently positive from our perspective. Also suggests that research tends to be more highly cited. And we look at your ability to pull in international students, international faculty. Alice Gass, the president of Imperial College London, as you can see from this slide, described this concept of hybrid vigor. That's something we take very seriously, that the idea of bringing different cultures, communities, people with different backgrounds, people who look at the world in different ways, bring them into a team, you get better results. They broaden and augment individual thinking, as Alice Gass said. So now let's take a look at the headline results of the 2022 edition of the World University Rankings that were published early in September 2021. The first thing I'd say from slide 12, of course, you can see here the top 10. It's quite boring, it's stable. It's the same usual suspect universities from the UK, from America, that dominate the rankings. But I think it's important to note that we are seeing increasing diversity among that sort of very high top 200 group. The US, of course, does dominate, followed by the UK, followed by Germany. But we see, for example, the Middle East entering the top 200 for the first time this year, with Saudi Arabia's King Abdulaziz University joining in 190th position. I would say, though, sadly, the only African nation in the top 200 is South Africa, the University of Cape Town in 183rd. The story of the rankings, I think, has probably been more than ever the rise of that great emerging economy, China. You see China moving from 2 universities in the top 200 back in 2016 to 10 in the most recent edition of the rankings. Tsinghua and Peking University have share 16th place, their highest ever positions, putting 2 universities in the top 20 for the first time ever. And other parts of East Asia are also succeeding. South Korea is increasing its representation in the rankings. Hong Kong has increased its representation since 2016. Singapore, just 2 universities, but steadily rising up the ranking. And if we look at slide 16, you can see here the average movement over the last 5 editions of the rankings in that top 200 group. And you can see actually, again, China is the fastest rising nation. You can see there Australia doing well, South Korea doing well, Canada, Germany, Netherlands, UK and US not actually improving as rapidly as those other nations. But let's have a deeper dive. Slide 17, the deeper dive. Let's go into that detail. And you can see there from slide 18 that Africa actually is very well, or reasonably well, represented in the overall rankings. We ranked, as I said at the beginning, more than 1,600 universities. And you can see the chart on the right-hand side there, the size of the box says the number of universities ranked, the color of the box. The darker the color, the higher the average score. And you can see there, Egypt leads the way for Africa. It has 23 ranked universities, 2 more than last year. You can see also South Africa and Algeria, they're well represented. Algeria actually has 11, 1 more than last year. South Africa also 11, that's stable. But Morocco, Nigeria, Tunisia, Ghana, Botswana, Kenya, Tanzania, Uganda, all represented in the rankings. Tanzania entering for the first time this year. So we can see the rich variety of excellence across the African continent. Quite a heavy emphasis on North Africa. I think we need to work more and work harder with sub-Saharan Africa to see more universities taking part, benchmarking themselves, holding themselves to account, and comparing themselves against the world's best. But overall, a rich picture for South Africa. For Africa as a whole, and particularly South Africa, which dominates those higher ranked institutions. And you can see also a strengthening position of African universities. There are now 16 African universities in the top 600 compared to only 12 last year. So African universities are not just joining in larger numbers, being better represented, they are starting to push higher into those upper echelons of the rankings. And there are probably around 20 to 25,000 higher education institutions in the world. So it's very clear that this is a list of a global research elite, and Africa has key representatives in that global research elite. If you turn to slide 20, you can also see that strength and depth. So overall, Africa now has 32 institutions in the world top 1,000 compared to only 25 last year. So it's that consolidation into that elite global 1,000. And if you look at slide 21, you can see the countries that have seen the strongest movement, strongest progress from 2021's rankings to 2022's rankings. The darker the color, the higher the change in score. And you can see if you hone in, I'll take you to slide 22. If you hone in there, you can see Africa. Nigeria has had a very strong year. That dark color shows Nigeria is improving. The very dark color there shows that Egypt, alongside Saudi Arabia, has been one of the fastest growing nations in the whole world. So Africa has a really fast moving, fast rising university system in Egypt. You can see also Morocco, Tunisia. As I say, a lot of focus on North Africa, which we'd like to address. And if you look at slide 23, you can see actually in terms of the movement by continent across all of the 5 pillar scores of the World University Rankings, Africa there in yellow, by far and away the most rapidly improving continent in the world for citations. That is, your research strength, your research influence is growing rapidly. You can also see there one of the strongest nations for industry income, improving those university industry relationships, vital to drive forward the knowledge economy of Africa. And then the research score, that's research reputation, research productivity, and of course, research income. Africa, again, is the strongest, fastest rising nation or continent of nations in the world. So really strong progress, really clear evidence that Africa's resurgence in terms of research excellence, in terms of teaching excellence, in terms of knowledge transfer, in terms of its universities driving African economic success and hopefully social success as well, is really clear for all to see. And the rankings provide the benchmark, they provide the stepping stones, they provide the data framework in order to achieve that. Just as I reach the end, I wanted to talk a little bit more about Nigeria, because I think it is a real star of the rankings overall, and clearly a shining beacon within Africa as well. The 2 tables you can see on slide 24 there show that Nigeria is very much on an upward trajectory. The graph on the chart on the left is the mean rank of the world university rank, all of the world ranking universities. The blue is the Nigerian universities. And you can see, of course, as the rankings grow and more universities across the world are constantly joining the rankings, volunteering to be benchmarked, asking to take part so they can benchmark them, prep themselves, so they can stand on the world stage. As the rankings grow, the average rank of each university, of course, drops. So the average ranking is dropping down towards the 800 mark, of course, because we have 1,600 universities ranked. But you can see Nigeria is bucking that trend. The average rank of Nigerian universities is growing despite the average dropping. And then if you look to the right-hand chart, you can see there the mean score of all ranked universities is moderately rising, but Nigeria's score is rising much more rapidly compared to the world. So Nigeria is on a faster, more powerful trajectory compared to the world at large. And you can see there in terms of specific improvements for Nigeria, you can see the biggest single most powerful change is publications per staff. So Nigeria's universities are more productive in publishing research in top-rated journals. And what's really exciting, as well as publishing more research, which is a powerful indicator, but we should also be conscious that quantity alone is not particularly exciting or important without quality. You can see from this data that the second best area of improvement is the quality of research, field-weighted citation impact, FWCI. So Africa's universities, in this case, Nigeria's universities, producing much more research, but vitally the quality, the impact of that research is also improving. So that combined effect is incredibly powerful for driving Nigeria forward as a knowledge economy. You can see also great improvements in producing doctorates scaled against undergraduates. So more research infrastructure, more of a research base being built, which is great. You can see Nigeria is also improving in international staff and international students. So it's drawing in more talent. It's arresting some of that brain drain it's been a victim of over the years, and many African universities are a victim of. Areas of needing further improvement with areas like reputation and, of course, income. All of this has been achieved despite losing ground relative to the rest of the world in terms of income. So really great success story for Nigeria. And I think also a sign again that having this data, taking part in this ranking, submitting yourself to this sort of scrutiny is really important in ensuring that Africa can actually capitalize on its opportunity and realize its full potential. So I'm going to end there on a quote, quite a old quote actually. This is Max Price, the former president of the University of Cape Town, who wrote for Times Higher Education back in 2012. And in the face of these sort of criticisms or challenges, it says Africa can't afford to focus on rankings. It can't afford to chase being top of the world, or it will never compete with Harvard and the wealth and riches of Stanford or Harvard or Oxford or Cambridge. I think this comment from Max Price really put it into perspective in the sense that, of course, there are a huge amount of priorities. Of course, all African universities shouldn't all be chasing global ranking, shouldn't all be aspiring to reach this elite world top 1,000 list, but actually significant numbers, key flagship African universities absolutely should be embracing these rankings. So Max Price wrote, "The production of new knowledge should not be the preserve of the rich and powerful countries of the world. The question of North-South inequality is not just an ideological matter, nor an issue of national pride. Rather, it's about economic development as developing countries transform into high-tech knowledge economies." He went on, "If a country cannot integrate reasonably competitively into global systems of trade, finance, communications, data, production, quality assurance, and global markets, it cannot develop. For all of these things, Africa needs at least some internationally competitive research universities." Again, not the whole system, not all universities. Lots of African universities may well say we have to focus on instruction, we have to focus on teaching, we have to focus on getting young people skilled, we have to make the very most of the youth population, we have to get people meaningful jobs. But also within that, we also need to make sure African universities are producing new knowledge. They're competing on the world stage in terms of that. They're arresting the brain drain. They have beacons of talent magnets for both faculty, for students. They retain more talent. And that's why I think the World University Rankings are a legitimate and relevant benchmark for all of Africa in terms of supporting the further success and the further growth for Africa and making sure Africa realizes its full potential. So thank you very much indeed for listening. It's been a pleasure to speak to you all. I hope I've raised some provocative comments and some provocative ideas, but fundamentally, Times Higher Education is here to listen and engage. We absorb huge amounts of data. We produce that back into the community through our content, through our rankings, through our lists, through all sorts of analyses, because we want to share that information to allow benchmarking to allow people to learn about the shifting sands of the global knowledge economy. And the exciting thing for me is that the shifting sands are shifting in favor of Africa as it makes exciting progress in the world rankings, exciting progress in the knowledge economy, and long may that continue. So thank you very much indeed for your time.